Welcome. So good to be with you on this Wednesday as we get together for a little midweek Bible study and devotional time. And I'm so glad that you've taken the time out to join us today to do just that. Hope you had a happy holidays and a good Thanksgiving with family and friends or whoever you're able to spend it with. And glad that you are again here with us today to dig into God's Word just a little bit and hopefully encourage us and enlighten us and challenge us in the ways that God would have us to live our lives. I heard a really cool story about a guy by the name of Roberto Vincenzo. You may not recognize that name. He was a famous Argentine professional golfer, and he once won a tournament. And he won several tournaments, but after this one particular tournament that he won, after receiving the check and smiling from the cameras and all that jazz, he went to the clubhouse and prepared to leave. And so sometime later, he walked alone to his car, and in the parking lot, he was approached by this young woman, and she congratulated him on his victory. And then she proceeded to tell him that she was in a bind and that her child, who she loved very much, was seriously ill and near death. And she didn't know how she could pay the doctor's bills and all the money that it was costing to help her to try and get better, and all the expenses that she was having to endure. And so DiVincenzo was just touched by her story. And so he immediately took out a pen and signed his winning check to be paid to be paid to her, so that she could take it and take the money from it. And he just simply said to her, "Make some good days for the baby." And he pressed the check in her hand and turned to leave. Well, the next week, DiVincenzo was having lunch at another tournament, another country club, another golf club, when a professional golf association official, a PGA official, came to his table. And the official said to DiVincenzo, "Some of the guys told me you gave some money to a young woman after you won that tournament last week." And DiVincenzo nodded in agreement or in affirmation. And the official said, "Well, I have some bad news for you. It was a con. You've been duped. She has no sick baby. She fleeced you, my friend." "You mean there's no baby who is dying?" said DiVincenzo. And the official said, "That's right." "Well," said DiVincenzo, "that's the best news I've heard all week." What an incredible way to look at the situation. And I wish I could say that I would have reacted with positive, similar positivity. I wish I could say that I wouldn't have struggled with feelings of resentment or embarrassment. I wish I could say that I wouldn't have thought, "Well, see if I get hung out to dry like that again." But I'm not sure I can say that with very much certainty. And yet when you look at DiVincenzo's attitude, I think it's reminiscent of the spirit that God has shown towards us. Despite despite mankind taking God's goodness and generosity for granted oftentimes, and despite our repeated failures, God was willing to give not just a token amount, but the ultimate sacrifice of his son. And he did so not reluctantly or with resentment, but willingly and lovingly, knowing that while most would reject his gift, some would respond in obedience, motivated by faith and love. I love what the Apostle Paul writes, because it's on one hand very beautiful, and yet on the other hand the stark reality of where we were and what we have been given and what God has done for us. He writes in Romans chapter 5 verses 6 through 8, "When we were utterly helpless." We don't often like to think of ourselves in those terms, but when it comes to salvation, we are utterly helpless in and of ourselves. Paul writes, "When we were utterly helpless, Christ came at just the right time and died for us, sinners." Now, most people would not be willing to die for an upright person, though someone might possibly be willing to die for a person who is especially good. But God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners. May the realization of what God has given to us motivate us to respond to him and to reach out to others with that same kind of love and generosity. I hope you have a blessed day. God bless.